following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
My name is Jasmine, and I am a recovering drug addict.
My name is Richie Farrell, aka the Old White Junkie.
And we are your hosts for Exit Team Nashua.
Our mission is to bring recovery into the living room.
Last year, over 72,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose.
That's almost 200 Americans every single day.
We will bring you guests with real-life experiences with addiction and recovery. Welcome to Exit Team Nashua. Hi, welcome to Exit Team Nashua. My name is Jasmine and I'm your host. Thank you for joining us. We have an excellent and very exciting, and I am sure going to be a very entertaining show tonight. As you may notice, there is a beautiful woman sitting across the table from me, and it's not Bobby.
I swear I'm not Bobby.
I know Bobby has been missing for quite a while, and no, he has not changed his appearance. This is Jesse, and I am really excited to announce that Jesse is the newest member of Exit Team. Welcome to the team.
Thanks, Jess.
It's an honor to have Jessie on the show here with us and to be out in the trenches with us because this is a woman that not only shows up for her own recovery, but shows up for others. And you see her all over the place, and she's all over the state of New Hampshire being a voice for those suffering. Jessie, let the viewers know a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a person in long-term recovery from IV heroin and cocaine addiction. I've been sober about 22 months. And
coming up on 2 years already?
Coming up on 2 years.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Amazing stuff.
And, I work for SOS Recovery Center.
What's that?
It's a recovery community organization. We are in Dover, Rochester, and Hampton.
Wow.
And we pretty much are a space for people to find recovery. So we're not a treatment center, but we're like it's a recovery community center. It's a nonprofit organization that we provide space for meetings. We do recovery coaching, all different kinds of things like art and recovery, yoga and recovery. And I'm the recovery friendly workplace coordinator. So I get businesses to get on board with the recovery friendly workplace initiative, which is a statewide initiative. And my salary is paid through a grant from the governor's office to help with that. So I'm really passionate about it. And, my training is in business and car sales. So that kind of merges my two, passions, sales and recovery. And I get to kind of like go in and sell recovery to people. And I really like it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm really excited to have you on the show here with us. And when I knew that the spot was going to be opening, there was no one else I could think of. There's no one else. So I'm a little bit crazy. Everybody knows that. I'm crazy because for me, there's no other way. And I'm so passionate about this. And when I was thinking about who to bring on the show that has the same light and the same energy force, and that someone that could contribute to the show and that is just out there on the grind as much as me, I was like, there's one person and one person
that means
I know.
so much to me. It means so much because Jazz, that you have been a role model to me, and Jasmine has actually witnessed my, some of my journey.
Yeah.
So she sponsored me for a little bit along the way, and was one of the first people that really showed me that it could be done,
Nice.
So that was 3 years ago, I think.
Wow.
Maybe more than that. I think it was just about 3 years ago because
Really?
I was in sober living at Rise Above at the time. So, but yeah, so, I've always seen what you did and kind of admired you, but
Thank you.
so thank you for inviting me.
It's a
to be a part of
tearjerker.
that.
I know.
We're
It's
just
already
on the show
early.
and
You're just starting.
We
You're
warned
just
you.
starting.
We told you you were
I
going to
know.
cry.
I know. I may.
You're going to cry, and we're also going to harass you.
That's okay. You
Welcome.
can.
Who are
Thank
you?
Well, my name is Tom.
Why
Tom
are you
Donovan.
here?
That's what I'm wondering. No, I'm here to speak about recovery.
Recovery.
Yes.
Okay. What qualifies you to be here?
Well, so I guess you want me to talk about myself a little bit.
Sure.
So,
You can talk about whatever
Whatever
you
you're
want.
comfortable telling us.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Divulge it all.
Yeah, I'm going to tell my whole life story from the beginning.
We
So
don't have
am-
time for that.
Yeah, I know. Well,
20
I
minutes,
don't know.
okay?
So I am in recovery myself. I have not had a drink or a drug for 10 years now,
Wow.
so it's been a long
Wow.
time, something I never thought possible. I work for a company called Addiction Recovery Services. I am a licensed clinician. We are a harm reduction program that provides medication and group counseling, IOP, for people experiencing substance use disorder. My own personal journey, I was a police officer for 25 years. And I think it's important for me to talk a little bit about that because
For sure.
there's a culture in that field where people use that as a coping skill, and I was guilty of that myself. So,
Were substances as a coping skill?
absolutely.
Okay.
All substances. My primarily drug of choice was alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I started drinking when I was 14 years old. I come from a family of 6 siblings. All of us have some type of substance use disorder. 2 of my siblings are passed
I'm
as a
sorry
direct
to hear
result.
that.
As a direct result of this disease. My sister this past April. And you know,
Is that the sister that you have her Mustang now?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Yeah. I like to talk a little bit about that car too, because I know my sister used that I mean, she had an opioid addiction and an alcohol addiction. And she used to use that car. It has such high mileages on it. I believe she used to run to Florida and take it on nefarious trips. And I can actually see on the dashboard, I could see little burn marks where she probably put the spoon down to heat.
Yeah.
So just like everything in her life, and of course anybody who experiences addiction, that addiction takes over your life, and it did for her. I mean, she lost her house, she lost her kids. I mean, this particular car, Mustangs have always been something that was what she loved. This car sat for 2.5 years. So after she passed, I recovered it more or less. Took about $4,000 just to get it to where up and is running. So now I drive it for recovery. I do a lot of outreach for addiction recovery services, and the outreach part is so amazing because I get to interact with people like you, but I get to really meet people on that ground level and try to help them get into recovery. To go back to the police world, one day during when I was actively drinking, I was riding with a woman. Her name was Amy, and she was this police officer that I was totally enamored with because, she put herself through school. We knew she had a tough family life. She had trauma in her life. She didn't have a lot of money, so she put herself through school. She became a police officer, went in the military. So we're sitting in the cruiser one day, and she says to me, "I'm going to go to this police party." I said, well, knowing how, police de-stress, I said, probably not a good idea. And then she says, well, drinking whiskey makes me crazy. And I said, Amy, don't do it. As I'm sitting there, of course, hungover and, probably not the best par of example at that point. So she went to this party, ended up fighting with her boyfriend, and she went home and she took her life.
Stop.
Yeah. And as I continued to work in that field, didn't stop me drinking. I had
Where did you work out of?
I was a Methuen police officer for
So
17
you
years.
experienced a lot, probably.
I did.
Okay.
So trauma after trauma, drink, and that was the culture, starting back in the 80s. I think it's got a little better today, but while I was working there, I had another person who was getting a divorce, and he attempted to take his life. And then I had another.
Are suicide rates high in law enforcement? Is that a common thing?
They absolutely are.
is.
I know
Substance abuse
is
too.
high because of the trauma in the first responders,
Absolutely.
But it's because of the work, though. It's not something that's talked about,
Yeah.
and it's
And
not
it's
accepted.
everything, and it's it's not just the trauma you see out there, it's the politics you deal with and then you're fighting with your family,
Right.
and then you believe it or not, like a part of me is like, how do I help people? Because back then when we're working with people with addiction, we would arrest them, and then you end up arresting the same one over and over. I can remember my wife had a cousin who who abused heroin, and he used to always, back then there was the old Methuen Mall, and he used to shoplift. And not only did he shoplift, he'd fight 6 or 7 cops every time, and then he'd get arrested and ask for me. And my heart went out to the guy. I'm like, it goes to show you again the nature of the disease. How can I help you? His name was Brent. How could I help you? He just recently passed too because of, hepatitis.
Yeah.
Eventually it gets you,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't have the drugs that they have today. And
Mm-hmm.
so after, to go back, I'm sorry to keep bouncing
okay.
around. So after I had another partner who made 2 attempts on her life, and I knew that I was going down that path too. And that's when I decided to go back to school and get my degree. And that was my belief on how to best help people as a clinician. But I do a lot more than just as a clinician.
Do you
That's
work
all.
with law enforcement?
I have reached out to several different police departments in an effort to, but police departments are kind of unique,
Yeah.
because I'll be honest, when Amy took her life, if you think I was going to ask for help, I wasn't going to, for many reasons.
Is it a prideful thing?
Yeah, I think it's prideful. It's ego. It's it's that persona of having to be a man.
You hold up that big, strong man kind
I
of
have
thing.
to. I can't be weak. But there's also a political element that people aren't aware of. That if the police chief doesn't like me, and I say that I have a problem, well, then there's an additional stressor that, that's why when I talk about
Like internally.
Internal.
Okay,
That's why I'm trying to
understand.
get the police departments to become recovery-friendly workplaces.
I know, and
That's
we're
we're
gonna
working
work
on it
that.
together, because
That's great.
like especially be able to bring them someone like you to provide like trauma
Mm-hmm.
therapy, different kind of supports like that.
And to also learn things that took me many years to learn, that I learned from folks like you.
Right.
Self-care,
Mm-hmm.
coping with things as opposed to bottling them up
Right.
inside,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah, feeling things and allowing yourself to feel those feelings.
Which is like a
Yeah,
hard thing to do,
connections.
especially when it's not cultivated like in your work culture. The people that you're
Right.
always around, like I'm at work more than I am anywhere else. So if the people
Right.
that I'm surrounded with are not healthy, like I'm
You're done for.
Right.
probably not going to be that healthy. And I'm not that healthy around work, just so everyone knows. So,
But I learned a lot
Yeah.
being in recovery because
Yeah. Yes.
you were basically trained to be emotionless.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I was in the military too.
Oh wow.
So I was a teenager that was heading down the wrong path. I'm not going to lie, it's funny. I was telling someone this story today. Because of my drinking and my expectations of my son, it took a while to kind of have been working on that relationship. So we went out to dinner one day and he says, "Dad," and he comes up with this question, "Tell me about your childhood." So then when I started to tell him a little bit about where I came from and what I was, he looks at me and he goes, "So you were a derelict." Because I was like a lot of teenagers experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just like anybody else. Addiction does have a genetic component to it or a predisposition, but a lot of times it's environmental, whether it's exposed in our family or our friends.
Mm-hmm.
My parents didn't drink, but their children did. My grandparents did. Both my grandparents I barely even knew because of addiction. And my parents were like, "No, but it just goes to show you that
It's generational.
It's generational.
Too. Yeah.
But the way we were raised was that sterile, my parents did the best they could.
Right.
But then go back to my son, those character defects, those behaviors, I treated my son the same way. And how many times have we said, or we've heard, "I am not going to be like
my
them."
parents.
And
Yeah.
we turn out to be exactly like them.
I know.
But in recovery, I learned to go back to that. I learned how to be a friend.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to be a husband. I learned how to be a father.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to love,
Mm-hmm.
because those were some things that not only was I programmed not to do,
Mm-hmm.
show emotions. We joke about crying.
Mm-hmm.
When my sister passed, I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, recovery is amazing.
Mm.
when we talk about recovery, there's a difference between recovery and sobriety, isn't there?
Oh, for sure, 100%.
Because we have to, I live by it. I live a certain way now.
Mm-hmm.
I live principles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hurt others.
You know what's funny when you say there's a difference between recovery and sobriety. I used to think that sobriety meant recovery.
Yeah.
And today, recovery doesn't necessarily mean sobriety.
So many people in abstinence-based recovery get so focused on their clean
Right.
time, and I'm like, I really don't care. I care about how you're
Mhm.
living. That's what I want to know.
And,
How
like,
are you living?
People, today are on, marijuana maintenance, Suboxone, methadone. There's just so many different ways to be in recovery
Right.
today, and we learn that you're in recovery when you say you are, and is your life manageable today, and
Are you participating?
are you participating in your recovery and in your life, and what does it look
Right.
like, And I mean, personally for me, I have to remain abstinent, but that's not the case for everybody.
Right.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And that's why our program, we are a harm reduction program.
Yeah.
And that's what we believe. We also believe that sometimes people are going to use.
Right.
So you treat them with love.
Yes, and then they
Right.
know where to go.
Right.
Love, kindness. We
Yes.
don't shame them.
And treat them how to
Yeah.
use, and teach them how to use safely. Don't use
Exactly.
alone. Have Narcan.
Exactly.
Like-
Or we say, listen, let me sit down. What are your goals and how can I help
It's
you?
just about
Do you-
treating people with love. Like literally,
Isn't that
that's
so
what it's
true?
about. Like I always tell people, like, you don't want to recover my way. Okay, like I love you. Like what
Right.
do I do to help you?
So
Like,
here you're looking at Mr. Military, football,
yeah.
athlete, police officer, now telling people I love them.
Yeah.
That didn't happen before.
And harm reduction.
And harm reduction, yeah.
I went to ARS.
Did you?
I went there twice.
Maybe we'll hire you too. Not
The-
that you have.
Oh, me and John have already had that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I went there twice. My first treatment ever was IOP.
Nice.
I don't want to say how long ago. It was a long time ago. But when I went back the second time, I had, did have a heroin addiction. And it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to harm reduction and to a program where I could admit that I used.
Right.
And I remember it was like my first day, and one of the group members had relapsed on heroin the night before, and he came in and he told the group, and he was crying and he was remorseful, and it was so powerful in that room because it wasn't like he was getting kicked out
Right.
and that he was afraid. He didn't want to let his peers down. You know what I mean? And I just remember saying, wow, this has got something. This is really cool. You can you can relapse and you can stay in the program.
Right.
Weird, And it's like, it should have been like that all along. You're going somewhere because you have a problem, and then you ask for help, and then you have, you show signs of your disease by relapsing, and they say, sorry, you're out of here.
Yeah, to a certain extent, though, at some
Yeah.
point it becomes like enabling the
Oh,
behavior.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But what
I
you
believe
do-
in treating people with love, and like I'll help you somewhere else. But like if you're
course.
just like coming here and unsuccessful over
Right.
and over, like this isn't right.
You have to
for
let them
you.
help hit
Correct.
their bottom, and you
Mhm.
can't.
Well, right.
For sure.
When people, you meet them where they're at, you support them, and you say, okay, so let's see how we can first figure out your goals. How do we achieve those goals? But usually abstinence is probably a long-term goal for most of the people in recovery. But sometimes that harm reduction is just that beginning piece to get you going.
I've seen when it's kind of funny because I've been doing this show for a couple years now, and like this is my truth. When I started doing this show, I was against harm reduction, and I was very vocal about it on this show. And then a lot of people in my life, I watched them start doing the same things I was doing, and I was like, I got humbled real quick.
I will tell you
You
another
know?
story. I have a sister. She abused crack. Like, I'm no different than anybody else. She ended up hitting her bottom. And it was a bottom like a lot of people where you're at the daybreak shelter and you lost your kids, you lost your house, you got all kinds of legal issues and all these other problems. So whatever her bottom was, I don't even really know what it was, but you know, now she drinks a little bit, but she's not using crack.
Yeah.
And she's got cleared up all her legal issues.
And that's her life.
Exactly.
Like, why
Exactly.
do I care how
We're
you
not the recovery police.
But again-
you know?
It's so funny. I used to care so much. Now I'm just like, man, I just want to love you. Like, what are you
Right.
gonna
Exactly.
do? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But again, you talk about that recovery thing that we talked about.
yeah.
And you mentioned, Jess, about life. She has a life.
Right.
Yeah.
She went to her daughter's wedding.
Right.
And this, you know, it was over at
Right.
that point,
Right.
you know? Someone told me once, when we get into recovery, families have a chance to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. That's a classic example. My own,
Mm-hmm.
you know? My daughter looked at me and said, I hated holidays. I hate, you know,
Mm-hmm.
pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, and again, like I said, my son and I didn't have the best relationship. All a result of my drinking,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And, but now those relationships have been healed.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my daughter will still, to this day, they still bring up stuff I used to do, and I just accept it.
Mm-hmm.
But she says things like, Dad, isn't it great to remember what you did?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it great that, you know, you're not hungover?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it? It's great to be, and we can all identify here,
Mm-hmm.
it's great to be invited places again.
Oh yeah.
It's great to be reliable again.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to be part of.
It's an ambivalent feeling that you know, everything happens for a reason. Everything's exactly the way that it's
Mhm.
supposed to be, and I had to go through the path that I did to get to where I am today. Obviously, I think we all probably can agree that that's hard sometimes to accept because of the destruction we caused along the way.
Right.
You know, like for me, hurting my son and my family. You know,
On
like
the opposite end of that, like, what a vessel and an opportunity for you to help the other women
Right.
going through that. Like,
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And like
Mhm.
I strongly believe that if I hadn't, like I used to say, like, oh, I went on the wrong path.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was the wrong path.
Right.
I think it was
your
actually the
path.
right path because I, for so long, had no passion. People, what do you
Mhm.
want to do with your
Nice.
life? I have no idea. I don't know what was inside me. I had just, you know, I just didn't know. And like today, I know that like I'm on this earth to help other people and to
Nice.
give other people hope. And I wouldn't have found that if I hadn't have gone to the places that I've been, if I
Right.
hadn't hit the bottoms that I had.
we get to work with the most broken.
Yeah.
Like the hopeless
know.
of the hopeless. I'm like, come
I
here. I got
I know.
you.
I know.
That saying, rock bottom will teach you lessons that mountaintops never will.
Yes.
I love that.
Good
See,
one.
that's a really
Yes.
good one.
Yes.
That should have been our caption.
Yeah.
So should have.
We could
It already
Use
is.
it next time.
Yeah.
Put
We
it in
didn't
the
say
pocket for
that.
later.
I'm totally impressed by and honored to be with you guys and to see what you
I love you
have
guys
done.
match.
I know.
You
Isn't
guys
it?
didn't even plan it.
Well, you
We didn't
kind of
plan
match
it.
him too.
Really?
Well, yeah, we got all the colors.
Meant to be.
And
Yeah.
you guys both have collared shirts on too. So look at that.
Right.
We're like a little. We both play off of him.
Yeah, well,
So what's life like today?
oh, I can only tell you that. First of all, you know, in recovery, we try to help everybody. So sometimes I'm still seeking balance, but life is good today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can remember being in that pit of despair and just hating everybody and being miserable. And I couldn't have a thing to say nice about anybody. I couldn't even drive down the road without getting in an argument or a fight. But now I'm in that peaceful serenity state of mind, and it's not perfect every day. But the difference is now I know how to get there again.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have to, like I said earlier, I live by a set of principles, but I practice them every day.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have that bad day, yes,
I was just gonna say you're talking about peace,
peace.
right? And so I never knew what peace was, but people always
Right.
talked about it
I
because like
know.
that's just a word until you actually experience it.
Right.
Just like freedom, like people would always talk about freedom. It's like it's
Right.
crazy
It's
until
just
you
a word.
experience it.
Right.
Yeah, and then
Good.
you're like, oh, I'm free.
What is that
And then-
feeling?
Yeah.
And then to also go back to the police state of mind and how you feel in that role, you know, and to come back and, like, for example, the first time I walked into a AA meeting, I was still working in that field. And it was extremely, extremely difficult because, you know, there are people that hate you because of what you do, and that's in
Probably
any life.
arrested them or.
Well, they hate you because you work at Dunkin' Donuts. I mean,
yeah.
but we make assumptions.
Right.
And I
Right.
came in there, and it turns out that it was only my assumption.
Right.
Mhm.
And it was very interesting. I did this big case, which I won't talk a lot about, but I ended up sitting next to this guy because we were both. It was one of these big cases where, like, you're on the front page of the paper and you're walking out of a place, and it's him and I. Picture yourself. God works in mysterious ways. I'm sitting next to him in the 12-step meeting,
Mm.
and he looks at me and he says, you know, well, first I looked at him because it was one of these things where, you know,
Someone has
nobody
to
knew
break
how
the ice.
exactly. So my first response was, you know, I'm really sorry that that happened. And he says, honestly, he says, you know, yeah, I was pissed off. I was mad at you for a long time, but you know what? That was the best thing that helped me because now I'm in recovery.
Mhm.
That's really
So,
cool.
but it was cool, and we went to a lot of meetings together. So it's funny
Right.
how it works.
And that's like the program bringing people together that you would never
Right.
ever
Right.
think would be
That's
together,
like
right?
all my
Right.
friends and also all the weird things that we do. I'm just
Right.
like, what am I doing and how did I get to this point in my
Right.
life?
Right.
Yeah.
But everything's that's too funny.
You're so funny.
But everything comes around, you know, when we do seek recovery, and we wish that we could just give it away.
Mhm.
I know we hear that in a lot of
Mhm.
different contexts, but I wish with some of the people that I've worked with, because I've worked at the Concord Doorway and I've seen people come in off the street, and you're like, man, I only wish you could get this,
Mhm.
you know, and figure out that we can all have a life. We can all accomplish anything we want to.
That's right. The same greatness that is instilled in it's like in me, Jesse, you, it's in
Right.
everyone.
Right.
You know, you just have to honor that truth.
And like the love and support is like huge. And breaking the stigma, like what we're doing today, is
Mhm.
allowing people to like let go of the shame of what they're going
Right.
through. And that's a huge part of it. I mean, for me, I thought I was the only one. You know, they posted my mugshot on Facebook and everyone was trash talking me. And I'm up in my room and, you know, I don't have anyone to call. And my mom's downstairs crying because she doesn't have anyone to call, you know. And, you know, just the place that we are in today, to be able to know that there's other people out there like
Right.
me and have those supports, I think is part of like the game changer in trying to like really empower people to find recovery.
Which is a great segue because we're out of time.
we
Come on, I have more.
I
I
know.
wanna say.
can have you come back.
Jesse can be reached at SOS Recovery Center for anyone that's looking out, looking to seek help. Tom can be reached at ARS Recovery Center, and I can be reached on Facebook. I am a heroin addict. Send me a message. Check out our page if you haven't yet. Go ahead and give it a like, and we love you. Thank you for watching.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.